Good morning, everybody. So today I'm going to be looking at making the skulls for our La Catrinas. So the skull, you kind of want to make sure everything else is kind of complete, that you have your hands on, your dress is done, all that kind of stuff. Now, me personally, because the head and the hat, the only area that it's touching the rest of our figure is at the neck, and we already did a couple of the neck bones. If my dress and hands and arms are done, I go ahead and bake this right now, so that way I don't mess anything up while I'm adding on the skull later. So if you do choose to do that, now I wouldn't bake anything until after you're actually ready to just do the head, because if you bake it, then you can't add any more clay on without extra special materials and stuff. So to start with the skull, usually I like to look at a skull first. So I have this one. It's relatively realistic. It was like $5 at the store. And it's close enough, but you can kind of see the face is a little bit curved, but it's mostly flat over here. And then there's a big ball for this part. It's kind of slightly oval, but a big ball. You can see it's indented on the side here, and that the cheekbones are really prominent. You've got kind of the upside down heart shape, and it sticks out a little bit, and there's a little bit of a bump right here as well. And then jawline like this, kind of the shape right there. And then notice how the teeth are kind of in line with the eyes, okay? So if you have a picture that you find on the internet, it's kind of helpful to start referring back to that. But to start with it, I'm just gonna take my ball, and I like to set it on the table. And your goal for this, like, I made 2 different sizes here. This size that I have is more for like a Barbie size doll like I've been doing. And this size right here is more for the size that you all are gonna be doing, which is slightly smaller. Because remember, the head, when we designed it, we measured things in heads. So the skull is 1 head, and that should be about the same distance from the chin to the chest. So your head should be about that big. So when you're making kind of your ball, you want to kind of think about that. So for my ball, I'm going to kind of pinch it together this way and kind of flatten it out that way. That's kind of making that general shape, right? Like that. I tend to like to skinny it out a little bit, make it a little bit more pointy. And then at this point, I'm going to add in the eye socket. So I'm going to use this little ball tool, and I'm just going to push it in. Now, lucky for us, we're not making, you know, super anatomically correct little guys here. So since we're making La Catrinas, if we have a slightly exaggerated facial structure, that's okay. When you're doing this, try to keep things as even as possible, because, you know, it's just clay, so I could always just re-roll this if I needed to. So once I have my eye holes, then I want to add on kind of that little dent at the top. So if I just take my thumb and kind of dent just a little bit, that'll help kind of create the eye ridge. Then there's also those dents on the sides. So like I showed you here, like there's some denting right here. So when I do it, you can see on this one, I just took my fingers and kind of smushed them in right there just a little bit. So I'm going to do that on here as well. So I'm just going to take my fingers and just kind of make a little dent on both sides. And just try to keep things as even as you can. So now it's a little bit dented. That's good. Then the next part, we can either choose to do the nose next or the cheek next. I tend to do the nose. So for the nose, I just take a little teeny ball and I roll out a little teeny coil, and depending on how small my nose is going to be is kind of how small I make the coil. But I take my little baby coil and I pinch it into kind of a V shape, and then I curve the edges in just a little bit. These bottom ones, I curve it in a little bit, and then I stick it right in between the eyeballs there. And then I can either use, depending on how big I'm making it, I can either use my needle tool. Let me use the ball tool to kind of even that out a little bit again. I can either use my needle tool or I can use my ball tool to kind of emphasize that little inner shape right here. So I'm just kind of widening it out a little bit and emphasizing that kind of heart shape that's in there. You're just sticking it on, kind of poking at it a little bit. Okay, so now I have the nose on there. And like I said, the nose sticks out a little bit. You can blend a little bit more if you want to. Or as long as it's stuck, you can leave it. Now the next part I'm going to do is the cheekbones, because we really want those prominent cheekbones. So you want to have 2 balls of clay that are about the same size. So usually what I'll do is I'll make 1 ball of clay and I'll cut it in half, because if I try to roll 2 equal sized balls, usually they're slightly different. Those are pretty close. So I'm going to take that little ball of clay, I'm going to roll it on the table to take it from a rounder shape. I'm going to lean just on one side and see how it becomes more pointy on the side. So I'm going to point one side so it's more of a teardrop shape. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just, instead of rolling flat, I'm tilting my finger off to the side so that it's easier to get that shape. So I'm going to just make sure it's nice and even. So it's kind of thick in the middle and tapered on the end. Now I'm going to do the other one. Same thing. You roll it on one side, roll it on the other side till it's kind of even like that. And then I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to hold it like this, and I'm just going to kind of curve it like that. Now this gets set right underneath the eye, just like that. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that there for a second. I'm going to do the other one. So for the other one, I'm going to hold it like that. I'm just going to kind of poke it just a little bit to get that angle. And I'm going to add it on right at the edge of the eye, right there. And then this is the part where I kind of start spending a little bit of time, you know, just gently blending the edges. One trick that I learned, like when you're done kind of forming, if you have a lot of fingerprints and you're having a hard time getting the fingerprints off, you actually can take a little bit of baby oil on a really soft brush and you can rub that on your clay before you bake it, and it'll take off the fingerprints. You just have to be really careful with it. And again, that's not required, but if you happen to have some baby oil and you want to try it because you have a lot of fingerprints, it's totally up to you. And you can still make it look really nice. My original one actually has a lot of fingerprints, and they just, because of how it's shaded, they just kind of look like the little lines and whatnot in the bone. Okay, so at this point, we're getting closer. We need to add on the jaw and we need to add on the teeth, and then we'll take a look at the back. So usually at this point, I've kind of rounded it all out a little bit. So now I like to kind of pinch it back a little bit flatter. And, and I like to, lucky, this part's gotten a little bit more flat, so I want to add a little bit of extra on there. So now I kind of have a choice here. Because this one and this one, this is basically the same stage. Now, if I like the way this looks and I don't want to add on too much more, I could just take my needle tool and do what I did on this other one, which is just draw some lines for the teeth. And that would be perfectly acceptable. So this could be a perfectly acceptable skeleton head, and that would look really nice. Okay, now if you want to make it more like this one, which is slightly more realistic, not super realistic, but a little bit more, then we have just a little bit more to go, and then I'll show you how to add it on to your actual figure. Okay, now we're going to take just a little piece, a little ball, probably smaller than that. We're going to take a little ball, kind of flatten it out, and we're going to make it kind of into a half circle shape a little bit. Okay, and we're going to, the straight side we're going to leave a little bit bigger. The back side we're going to kind of flatten out a little bit. So it's kind of a triangle from the side. These pieces are so small. That's okay. And we're gonna add this on here. At first it looks kind of like a little mustache, but this is actually gonna end up giving us our little top teeth area. So I'm gonna pat that in. I can use my tool to kind of help smooth it a little bit if I need to. Just be careful. So this is where the teeth are gonna go. Now for the actual jawline, that's just gonna be a little coil. So I'm gonna take my little coil, roll, roll, roll. I'm gonna flatten it out. And then I'm gonna use the side that was against the paper for this next part. So I'm gonna add that in right on the edge here. And then usually I'll just kind of fold it up a little bit. And then fold it up a little bit. Now at this point, I do need to kind of fix the edges. I'm having one of those days. It's been a bad allergy day, and apparently my skills of holding on is one of the allergy symptoms. Okay, so you can kind of see like I've added on the little bottom jaw. Now from the side it doesn't, you can kind of see it's not blended in or anything, and I'll look at that kind of stuff in a little bit. Like I'm just going to push this out of the way a little bit. I'm just going to roll it back. Add a little bit of clay back there. Okay, so that's going to look a little bit more realistic. Okay, so now at this point, I kind of like to do teeth like these ones here where you can kind of see the whole teeth, as opposed to these ones here where it's just the idea of teeth. Although both, like I said, look nice. Now, if you want to do the ones where all the teeth show, it's actually very similar to when you do the other teeth. You start the same way. So usually I find my center line and then I go in opposite directions. And then making sure that my tool is super clean, I will just kind of draw on the extra teeth. And anytime I see like there's like a little clay boogie or something hanging on there, I want to take it off. Because if I leave it on there, then it's just going to add clay boogies onto my teeth, and I don't want that. So here we go, almost there. Now this, again, you can be as creative as you want. You don't have to have crazy teeth. If you want to add on lips, you could do that. If you want to, like try to do another technique that you saw on the internet or something like that, that's fine too. Okay. So here is basically our finished skull. You could kind of mess with it a little bit. I dropped mine a couple times, so I could use a little extra fiddling with it. Now to actually add it on, I want to have, like I said, everything else done. On my original one, I had a couple more little neck bones. So I'm going to add on just a couple more neck bones. You're not going to see most of it, but you don't want any of the wire showing. So you just want to make sure that the wire is covered up. Now, when you add this on, you want to kind of figure out like what shape and everything that you want this to be, and make sure that the wire's not going to poke out the top. Because if the wire's going to poke out the top, you're going to want to cut some of it off. And you can just use a pair of scissors for yours, like I said. Ooh, watch out for that. Okay, now I'm going to have mine going off to the side. And remember, when you add this on, it's not in the very, like the neck is not in the very center, okay? It's a little bit towards the back. You're just going to take it and you're going to shove it on there until it touches the neck, and then you can kind of adjust it. Now, do spend some time and kind of actually look at it. Like, does it actually match the shape or the size? Does it look too big? Does it look too small? Because really, it's just clay. So if it's too big, make another one or make a smaller one. So I actually think this one is a better size for that. And I'm going to have mine tilted like this. All right, thanks everybody.